I have been farming and learning how to farm for 4 years on an organic farm. And as a beginning farmer, I have come to accept the reality that part of my job is making really big mistakes. A couple summers ago, one of my nightmare mistakes came to pass. It was July in the Central Valley of California, and that means two things. One is harvest time for our organic peaches and nectarines, and it's really, really hot. And that summer, we were in a race against the heat. You see, because one day can mean the difference between picking a peach at its peak of perfection or arriving late to an overripe piece of fruit that most likely will get bruised and won't make it to market. And we never hedge our bets by sacrificing flavor and picking green. So we were riding that wave of ripeness, but we were feeling like we were slipping behind a little bit. So we had drastically expanded our working crew by 50% to a total skilled workforce of 3. We're a very small operation. That was a big deal. And our workers had just been working all morning to pick these beautiful peaches, hand-picked into these totes, stacked on a pallet, ready in the fields. And it was my job to bring that pallet of about 1,400 individual peaches from the fields on a trailer with a tractor to the packers. So I climbed up on the old Massey Ferguson, got it started, put it into gear, and eased off the clutch. As I started to make the first turn to get back to the yard, I glanced over my shoulder and I saw behind me the pallet begin to lean. Helplessly, I watched sitting on the tractor as the lean turned into a fall, and in a giant crash, all of the peaches were on the ground, gashed open, juice was everywhere, our fruit was rolling in the dirt. I hung my head low. Not only was that thousands of dollars and a year of heart and sweat, I also had to call my boss, who's also my treasured teacher and mentor, and also my dad, and tell him what happened. And in that moment, I succumbed to that primal question of self-doubt. Why am I doing this? Why farm? Now, I have cultivated deep reasons for why I have chosen this life, but I believe this question, why farm, has a relevance far beyond my individual life. If we take seriously the call to change the way we eat, to remake our food system into a deliciously sustainable one, we need to continue to change and adapt the way we farm by using sustainable practices, and that means at the core, we need farmers. The United States Department of Agriculture predicts that in the next decade, half of all farmers in the United States will retire. Half. And from every statistic I've read, we're not even close to replacement rate, let alone expanding opportunities for new beginning farmers, for small operations. So we're at this really unique moment of transition and an opportunity to transform the next generation of farmers to make them a sustainable generation of farmers. And we also know from my experience, we need to make room for beginning farmers to make mistakes as they learn and negotiate the inherent risks of farming. But there are also larger structures that we've heard about and know about that make the challenges for beginning farmers even harder. There are so many things to worry about, but some from my worry list are climate change. I don't know how on our small 80-acre farms we're going to adapt, but we're going to try. I'm worried about our economic structures that make it difficult for my friends who don't have land to get access to land. I'm worried about the ability for small farmers to create financially viable operations. And I am worried about the cultural norms that shape the very imaginations of future farmers. I am not supposed to be a farmer for so many reasons. I'm Asian American, I was born in a female body, and I'm queer. So when I think about these larger structures, and I think about that question, why farm? Answering it doesn't feel like an individual endeavor. It feels like a calling for all of us. But when I'm alone, in front of my big mistakes in those fields, in front of the toppled pallet of peaches, I have to conjure the collective memory and stories I've inherited. I conjured the courage of my parents who transitioned our farm to organic, and I remember this man. This is Takashi Joe Masumoto. This is my Ji-chan, my grandpa. Although he's no longer physically with us in this planet, he is a part of my daily life. My Ji-chan bought the first 40 acres of our farm in 1948. This beginning act in 1948, I believe, was a radical one, because only 3 years prior to this, my Ji-chan and all of my Japanese-American family were surviving in what they called internment camps during World War II. My family was one of 120,000 Japanese Americans who were living on the West Coast, who were forced to leave their home, confined behind barbed wire, denied their legal rights as citizens and legal residents of this country, and made to feel ashamed of who they were because they were Japanese. Now, when my Ji-chan as a young man left camp, he went back to the Central Valley of California, saved what little he could, and he decided to be a farmer. He decided to literally plant roots in a country that had just told him he did not belong. That act of radical resilience, of deciding to rehabilitate the soil and himself to feed people, that story grounds me every day. And that story makes my Ji-chan a hero in my life. But I believe that we must dismantle the structures, ideologies, and systems that required my Ji-chan to be a hero. Not because he doesn't deserve to be one, but because we all deserve to be heroes. I want to end with a dream in a spoken word piece called My Field of Dreams. We had been just days away from harvest, and it never rains in June. It can't rain in June. It's not supposed to rain in June. In one night, my first summer home, 1 1/4 inches fell, the sound like angry fists on the roof, and outside the invisible drops stained the swollen cheeks of our fruit, leaving an invitation for rot. After the storm passed, we surveyed the damage. My father came in and looked at his feet. He peeled off his boots, his motions heavy and slow, as if he too had been soaked in the rains. We strategized, hoped, and invented what we might do in the orchard's worst hit: work, 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 sweat, work, so that we might salvage our June crops, might break even. Now, I don't want money to cloud the meaning of my life, but break even stung my ears. I know I can't control the rain, but I also cannot accept a world in which the margins of economic inequality are getting bigger. Farm workers make a minimum wage, and farmers, especially small farmers, struggle to break even. So I start to dream. I dream of a different world where a losing season wouldn't mean the end of a family farm, where there might always be a next year. And then an answer comes to me like a gift from the universe, the first blossom in spring. We need the NFL. No, not a career change for me. I mean a national farming league. Imagine who could feed us. Imagine the best and brightest out of high school, graduates from top-tier universities waiting anxiously in the first-round draft pick for a lifetime of farming. There'd be a whole industry built around equity and transparency and recruiting the most talented people to live and work with the earth based on their love of food and the land, their ability to sweat, their critical thinking skills. There'd be statistics on who drove the tractor with the most efficiency and accuracy, qualitative analysis of who could pick the perfect peach or plant the best cover crop. We'd trade in helmets for straw hats, tight spandex pants for a pair of worn-out, hand-me-down jeans. Imagine who could feed us. And I can just see it now. All of you, the fans. Every year there'd be sold out produce stands, scalpers outside of Whole Foods claiming to have VIP access to the best produce. People would sleep outside their nearest farmer's market to get the best position in line. Youth farming programs would pop up everywhere. Farmers and farm workers would give guest appearances to give inspiration to the next generation of farmers and farm lovers. Imagine who would feed us. We'd all be clamoring to pledge our allegiance to a new brand of mascots. One of my alma maters, the University of Texas at Austin. The Longhorns would actually represent sustainable conservationist ranchers raising ecologically and ethical meat in the great state of Texas. The Sun-Made Girl of Sun-Made Raisins would be more like a Latina Xena the Warrior Princess, kicking the butt of any xenophobe in the States and representing a model of a successful cooperatively owned business. The Cheeseheads from Wisconsin would actually represent generations of artisan cheesemakers handing on secret recipes. We would have to build ecologically friendly bleachers on the sidelines of our farm to accommodate the thousands and thousands of fans who would want to come and cheer on our farming team. The big city chefs would be on the sidelines as for the crops as soon as they were out of the field. Home cooks would be trading NFL cards of secret kitchen wisdom. Kids would be fighting over which farm worker was their hero. They'd ask for autographs and swoon for the sweaty bandanas the farm workers would throw into the fields after the day was done. Farm workers would be millionaires. And farmers, we'd be more like Zen Buddhist coaches on the sidelines. And the NFL Hall of Fame would be overwhelmingly composed of immigrant names, Native people, pictures of good-hearted working-class white folk, rooted people of color who have fed us for generations. Whole histories of marginalized people on the land would no longer be silent, they would be revered. Especially back in those stands where in the front row there would be a mixed-race group of beautiful chubby guys with their shirts off, their chests painted in bright colors and watermelon on their head because they actually loved watermelon. But wait a second. In this crazy dream, my imagination runs wild. Where would this leave me? Where would I fit in? There'd be no question my NFL would be a feminist one. Bodies of all shapes and sizes and colors would be championed, and there would be plenty of room on the land for my transgender brothers and sisters too. And the only cheerleaders allowed would be benevolent fans in genderqueer produce costumes. It would be a revolution in immigration, race, gender, food policy. We might even have a food warrior president of the United States, foodies for Congress, foodies take over school boards. And even though this is just a crazy dream, imagine who will feed us. And even though I still don't really like football, imagine who will feed us. And even though I don't really care about money and fame, because if I did, I would not have chosen this life. I want the people who work the land, the people who feed us, to be valued. And as so many people have said today, I can't do this alone. Let's do something radical with our lives. I'll go back home and continue to learn how to farm, and I'll be waiting for you in our field of dreams. Thank you.